Today we're going to be taking a look at the ASUS Zenfone Max Pro M2. For the sake of me not running out of breath every time I call it, we'll just call this the M2. And right out of the box, the M2 comes with a 10-watt charger with micro USB cable and a free silicone case. Pretty bare with no included earphones, sadly. In terms of design and build quality, the M2 has a 19:9 tall aspect ratio notch screen with thin bezels, save for the chin, and it's all protected by Gorilla Glass 6. On the left is the usual dual SIM tray with a separate micro SD slot, and on the right is the power and volume buttons. The power button is nicely positioned for my thumb, and I generally don't press the volume down button by accident. On the bottom is a single speaker grill, a 3.5mm audio jack, thankfully, and a micro USB port. I would have preferred USB Type-C here, but for the M2, I'm making an exception here. More on that later. The overall build quality is great. ASUS has done a good job with the M2's polycarbonate body. It looks like glass, but it's actually plastic with an almost rubbery feel to it. It also looks pretty premium, but prone to scratching on rough surfaces. At the back, there's a dual rear cameras and a rear-mounted fingerprint reader. The fingerprint reader works surprisingly well, even when it's mounted on your car's dashboard and you have to perform that awkward reach around. The M2 is loaded with Android Oreo right out of the box. There's a few custom apps by ASUS such as the calculator, the camera, and a file manager. Stock Android it may be, but updates are still handled by ASUS themselves, so they won't be as quick as on the Pixel devices or on Android One devices. Otherwise, this is near stock Android and it delivers a pretty much snappy experience. I'm not sure if this is just me getting used to an all-screen display, but the default UI settings on the M2 makes everything seem big. A great feature for those with poor eyesight, but some UI elements occupy too much space like the quick settings. Speaking of UI, we also have to talk about the display. The M2's IPS LCD is a bit on the cool side, but as an IPS panel, it's still pretty color accurate, with deep enough blacks and glows bright enough so that sunlight legibility isn't bad either. I have to say though that there is a persistent touch issue with this review unit. I asked ASUS about it and they said that this has been an isolated issue with just the review units being affected. But the biggest downside of this notch display among others is that you can't turn it off. Unlike on the Oppo F9 or the Huawei Nova N3i, you can't terminate the UI at the notch's edge. And because of that notch, if you have two SIM cards installed, you can only see two notifications. If you have three notifications, you get just three dots to remind you that there are notifications to be seen. A huge bummer if you're the kind of guy that wants to check on his notifications with just a glance and not have to swipe down every time you have to look at it. Performance-wise, since the M2 is powered by the Snapdragon 660, it should perform about the same as other Snapdragon 660 devices. And that is to say that it doesn't perform bad, but it's not the best either. It's just enough performance, especially for gaming. In PUBG, it actually performed pretty well with 50 plus FPS, but not quite 60 FPS steady. In Mobile Legends, it was able to sustain 60 FPS, and it was a pretty smooth experience all in all. Even the UI, in Google Maps, in Chrome browsing, everything is smooth with no lag whatsoever. But what's really outstanding about the performance is the battery life. A lot of mobile phones these days, especially the flagship ones, can do a lot of gaming, picture taking, you name it, but only for a short amount of time, relatively. For the M2, however, it can do it almost the entire day. And I'm not kidding, this is an all-day phone. I know a lot of reviewers out there would say that this is a 2-day battery life device, but I'd like to put it as, don't hold back and use it all day worry-free phone. Seriously, I've been playing games, taking pictures using Google Maps and other stuff on this phone for nearly a month, and it has gotten through each day without a problem. I even leave the house without it being fully charged, and sometimes it can still last the entire day. But this does bring me to the large battery's downside, which is the charge time. Without fast charging support, the M2 takes painfully long to charge. So much so that the only way for me to top it up to 100% is by leaving it charging overnight. But if you do charge it overnight, that's really the only time of the day you'll need to charge it. And that's why I'll let the M2's micro USB port slide, because you won't be using this port very much. As for the cameras, the rear camera setup is a 12 megapixel main sensor and a 5 megapixel depth sensor. And on the front, there's a 13 megapixel camera. The rear camera's portrait mode works quite well, and so does the portrait mode for the front-facing camera. The pictures the main shooter produces is quite good, with lots of detail, minimal noise, and well-balanced color, especially in well-lit outdoor shots. Turning on HDR does a good job of leveling out the exposure in the images, and I would recommend turning it on whenever the lighting conditions are terrible. Outdoor video quality is good too, although indoor video both at 1080p and 4K tends to be quite noisy. Plus, the M2 is kind of twitchy when it comes to focus, so even shooting at a steady subject, you get this weird throbbing effect. Hopefully that's addressable via a software update. Also, it is important to note that the M2 does not have optical image stabilization, and its EIS is disabled for 4K video. So if you have a shaky hand, I recommend turning to 1080p mode so that the EIS is enabled. In conclusion, ASUS has definitely realized that there is genuine interest for large capacity battery phones, starting with the M1 and now the M2. For those people that are looking for a true all-day phone with more than adequate performance, then this gets my top recommendation. As much as flagship phones like the ROG phone or the iPhone XS excites me, phones with large capacity batteries like the M2 give me confidence and security to be able to carry out daily tasks without my phone dying on me. But the M2 isn't perfect. The biggest downside to the M2 is in the software. The inability to turn off the notch and to set individual full screen settings for each app really shows where ASUS has cut some corners. So here's my recommendation to ASUS. Make the M3, the next one after this, an Android One device, and throw in some fast charging, and forget about the notch too. And if they do that, they'll have one of the best sub 15,000 peso smartphones out there. As for the M2, I'm hoping that with Android 9 Pie, which is hopefully come to this device, I hope ASUS can fix a lot of the UI software problems with it. Thanks for watching, and like and subscribe for more videos like this.